I am Matthew Jenkins Yarashevitz, Music Director Designate of the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
And I'm Rachel Hagemeyer, President and CEO.
This is Orchestrating Change. We are joined today in person by Alicia Lieu, who has served as one of our conducting fellows for the 2024-2025 season. She originally trained as a composer, earning degrees from the University of California at Santa Barbara and San Francisco Conservatory before pivoting to a career in conducting. Along with her master's degree in conducting from the University of Texas, El Paso, she has participated in numerous conducting masterclasses and workshops. She even founded two organizations herself, the New York Conducting Institute and Women's Conductors Workshops, that put on their own conducting workshops in support of others in the profession. She has also founded several groups dedicated to supporting composers, including Pitches Brew with a P and Composers Collective. Additionally, she is the founding artistic director of Musikapiphany, which she leads. Alicia Lieu, it has been a pleasure having you around Canton this season, and we are delighted to have you on the podcast today. Welcome to Orchestrating Change.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys have been so hospitable, and it's been so great to be here.
And you've brought me so many delicious spices and curries, and it's been great. So we've gotten to know you over the past year or less than a year, however many months it's been. But if you wouldn't mind just, after that amazing introduction, saying a little bit about you and maybe where you're from, how you grew up, all that good stuff, maybe how you first got interested in music, that kind of stuff.
Sure. I'm based in New York City now, but I grew up in San Jose, California, so Silicon Valley. My dad was an amateur pianist, and he started me on piano when I was 5. And, I enjoyed it, but I don't think I had what it took to become a virtuoso pianist.
Neither did I, Alicia.
Neither did I. I started piano when I was 3. I should be so much better than I am.
Great. We're in that club together. Yeah. But anyways, I was given a flute, I think, by an aunt. So I played that for a while in junior high. And then in high school, our band director said, it was like freshman year, end of freshman year, and he goes, well, we don't have any trombones for next season. Who wants to switch to trombone? And I was like, I do. And so so basically I played trombone in every ensemble, jazz band, wind ensemble, marching band, orchestra, pit orchestra, all that. Yeah. And so I feel like, though, sitting in the low brass section is kind of what gave me sort of my musical mojo, or I don't really know what to call it, but sure. Because you have a lot less notes, right? Like in the low brass section, and you do more listening just because, you have to count more. And so I really enjoyed being a low brass musician. It was, I don't know, I think somehow it just gave me more listening skills.
Yeah.
Really quickly, time out. So every time you tap on the table, it's picked up.
Gotcha.
So just
don't tap the table.
Yeah, just be aware of that.
I would say if you're a talker with your hands, like if you lean or if you hold it, and like even if you like that'll get picked up, right? But if you're worried about talking with your hands, like holding, that's what I do, because I tend to talk with my hands, or leaning back and just air talking and that kind of stuff. But this the one bad thing about the table is that it's shaky. So okay.
Gotcha.
All right, here we go. Back into it. So everything that you're saying makes sense to me as to how then you went from the low brass section, where you're listening and counting a lot, to pursuing composition, which was your first musical path of choice right out of high school. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I was a freshman at UC Santa Barbara. Go Gauchos! And I was actually undecided, but I knew I was still taking music classes. And so I had the opportunity to take a beginning composition class. And that was it. Like, one semester in, I had the bug. I was like, oh, I love this. This is amazing. so there's a college in Santa Barbara called the College of Creative Studies, which is it specializes in 9 different majors, and music composition was one of those. So I actually applied there and I got in, even though I had just started composing. And it was like grad school for undergrads, and it was a really amazing program. And so I called my parents and I was like, "Oh, Mom, Dad, I'm going to be a composition major. I figured it out." And my parents are very supportive, and my mom says, "Honey, that's wonderful. That's great. We support you 100%. We just want to let you know it's going to be hard to get a job when you get out of school."
Yeah.
Which, I heard the words, but
right.
I had no idea what they actually meant. Mm-hmm. And so I completed my undergrad, and I went on to the program at San Francisco Conservatory in composition.
A very prestigious conservatory for all of our listeners who aren't as familiar. So from a beginning composition class to the San Francisco Conservatory in only a few short years is very, very impressive.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So creativity was always, I always had it for some reason, I was always making things as a kid. And so composition is just making sound out of thin air, right? It's like organizing chaos. So for me, it just came very naturally. And actually, the background as a composer, I feel like just fully enhances the experience as a conductor, because I just feel like I'm always thinking, oh, what was the composer thinking when he or she did that? And, for the most time, I'm blown away. I was like, wow, that's so great. And sometimes I'm like, why? Why did they write that?
Yeah. So when you finished your degree in composition, what did you do after that?
Well, side note, I actually went to China for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I worked for a year after grad school as a teaching artist. Mm-hmm. And then I decided, hey, my parents are from China, and I'm actually 100% Chinese. I was born in America. I feel like that I need to say that at this point in time. But I had this deep desire to understand Chinese culture from the inside and not from the American perspective. So I took a 2-year contract teaching English in China, in Shanghai, and I moved there. And my parents were like, well, we left that country, so we're not going to go with you. And I'm like, no, you don't have to come with me. So it was this really great adventure. It was just amazing to hang out with Chinese people, get to know the culture from the inside. And I took some piano lessons in Chinese, which is my second language. And it was very interesting. A lot of times I was nodding like I understood what the teacher was saying, and I didn't. But anyways, I think that's natural. And then I was taking a few Chinese composition lessons here and there. It didn't last very long because I kind of gave up because the teacher would always say, well, your melodies aren't sounding Chinese. They sound American. So I realized.
You're like, sorry about that. That's where I happen to be from.
So a lot of times I feel a little bit like othered, sort of being Chinese. And growing up, it was always kind of pointed out that I was different, But
do you think there's this expectation that because you're Chinese, what you write will sound Chinese, even though you were born in is that this idea, or is it and then it's the opposite?
Yeah, it was the
opposite there, or something like that. Is that kind of
because I was always self-conscious about being Chinese, right? I have the black hair, I have the almond eyes, and then now all of a sudden I'm realized that I'm not actually Chinese. I'm actually 99% American.
They're pointing out no, you're incredibly American. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it was a huge time of self-growth and self-discovery and just kind of a shift in my perspective.
Wow.
So, and it made me appreciate America a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting.
So you were there for 2 years. Eventually, you decided to pursue conducting. a number of years, over a decade after you got your master's degree in composition. So you were in China for 2 years. So what then happened in the intervening years after that where you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to, in my 30s, go and pursue this a totally different thing.
Well, you know, life, nobody can see ahead to the future, right? So what had happened was, so there is a teacher that I basically moved to New York to study with composition, and he teaches at Juilliard, and I had studied with him in Paris, and I was like, well, I want to study with you, but clearly I'm not going to get another degree. I already had a master's. So I said, well, if I move to New York, can I study with you? And he graciously made an opening in his studio for me. So I moved to New York City with 2 suitcases, not really knowing anyone. I had rented a room, actually from a colleague from conservatory who was going to Manus at that time.
Amazing.
Yeah, in choral conducting. And we had been composers together at conservatory. So he was the only person I knew. And we had a place together in East Harlem, which didn't last long because our roommate got mugged at gunpoint on the front stoop. And so we left him. We all moved somewhere else.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry, I ramble. So I was studying composition. So I'm in New York City. I'm doing the hustle, right? I'm doing the day job. I'm taking composition lessons. And eventually I think, like one day I want to conduct my own orchestral composition. And I didn't know much about conducting, but I did know enough to say like, oh, listen, I need lessons, right? It's not like you just stand up in front of a group and just wave your hands and that's it. Like there's actually a technique to conducting. Mm-hmm.
Remarkably, I did just stand up in front of a group when I was in college and it didn't turn out too poorly. But yeah, you live and you learn. Yeah.
It works for some people. Yeah. So that was like all those years later. And to me, it was just like, hey, I think I need another skill, but like, you know, to do what I want to do. But I did not expect to be completely like just roped in, just like, what's that word when you just like fall in love with something? You know, the bug bit me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The bug bit me. And so it was funny because like my first teacher said, well, why don't you make a recording and why don't you just have 2 of your friends, like even if it's like a violin cello duo, just make a tape, just conduct them and make a tape. So that was the first like video footage I ever made, was 2 of my friends who, you know, as conductors, we often rely on our friends to help us with auditions. And so that was like 2013. That was a really, really long time ago.
Yeah.
And so I had not expected to get bitten by the bug, but I was. And then in New York City, of course, there's so many resources. So I started with my own lessons, looking for my own teachers. And then people I knew who were getting into conducting or, you know, like were looking for groups or more experience. All these people were like, hey, I want to do that workshop too. I'm going to learn too. I'm going to do that with you too. So it just sort of organically grew into this, more people want to learn. So let's just, you know, okay, let's organize it. Let's put it into a workshop. Let's do it. So.
Wow. Yeah. And so when did you start trying to pursue conducting? What year was that?
I think it was 2013.
2013. So you've been on this journey and you have the degree now. And you have probably seen a lot. I mean, women in the field of conducting is still not incredibly common. It's more common than it was, but it really wasn't common in recent history, incredibly recent history. So what has that been like, especially someone who has entered this field later than traditional? Most people do it right out of college, right? Most people get right into conducting. As a female conductor in a time where now it's a little more common, but still not quite common. Like, how has that experience? Like, did you have people you looked up to in the field? Was that even a consideration of yours? Just kind of how's that been?
Well, let's just backtrack a little bit to the composition field. So,
okay. Yeah,
that was like 2000s, right? Mm-hmm. So there wasn't this huge push for women composers' music to be heard at that time.
Right.
At conservatory, I still had teachers saying, well, women shouldn't be writing music.
Really?
No way.
Are you kidding me?
I will not name names.
Oh my.
Can I just ask, at San Francisco Conservatory?
Wow.
No way.
I hope we've all come a long way.
But they admitted you. They accepted you.
Yeah, but they didn't give me any scholarship. I paid full price of admission.
Really?
And it was shocking because I was studying with a female composer, right?
What?
They had a female composer on staff, and then the female composer and said composer were actually really good friends. But
interesting.
But it just kind of tells you like the environment of it was still kind of it was still kind of like that. And so I guess I developed this sort of like, well, I don't care how it's perceived. This is what I feel strongly that I want to do. Yeah. So I'm going to do it. And whether or not I get recognition for it is neither here nor there. So I kind of had that mindset from trying to be a composer, from being a composer.
Right.
And then so when it came time to conduct, of course, now we have many more initiatives.
Right.
For female conductors, right. But even
and female composers.
Yes.
Yeah, both.
Yes. I'm very grateful that like Matthew has decided to just make a real effort to involve women compositions. So like, thank you.
It's been a joy to discover some amazing music that regardless of the fact that it was written by women, it's like, it's amazing music. It deserves to be heard. Right. And the fact that it sat there all these years, it's like, how did it take till my 30s for me to know that this was a thing?
Right.
And it's because, like anybody else, I grew up going to the symphony and only men were ever played. In college, only men were ever taught in music history classes. Mm-hmm. In grad school, conducting, like only men were part of the curriculum. Yeah. So it's like, it just wasn't even on my radar. And one of the things I've loved doing is, especially with the youth symphony, the people in the youth symphony will never grow up like I grew up because they played Florence Price's first symphony. They played this piece by Alva McDonough, a living Irish composer who flew from Ireland for the world premiere and talked to the orchestra and took a bow on stage. Like the kids now will never grow up thinking the same way. And I'm hoping it's just going to be an exponential effect that pretty soon no one's even going to bat an eyelash.
That's amazing. Yeah. I need to look up. I've never heard of her.
Yeah, she's great. She was here. It was a lovely time.
She's actually, she is mainly a cellist, and she switched to composition. Well, not totally switched. She still performs as a cellist, but added composition later in life.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kind of not dissimilar to your story as a conductor.
I was incredibly fortunate that one of my music history teachers in college was a woman, Danny Kuntz. And so we talked a lot about female composers when I was in school, which was, but, and then I also think it's interesting, like the earliest composer typically talked about in composition classes is Hildegard de Bingen, which is like, she's the original,
the OG.
She's the OG queen of composition. I was listening to a Jacob Collier talk and someone said like, who is the Bach of Bach? Because we always like refer to Bach as like the and he was like Hildegard de Bingen. He's like it has to be her, obviously. And I think that it's so interesting that like the root of the root, which is a woman. And I think just it's interesting that there's someone even just 20 years ago that would be like, women shouldn't be making, that's crazy. That's wild. It's just wildness. But and then on the this idea of like women shouldn't be conducting, of like it's too
well,
yeah, I don't know.
We have one of the same mentors, Matthew and I. Her name is Diane Witry.
Diane Witry.
Shout out to Diane. So she was one of our, so the first time we did a women conductors workshop, she was our master teacher. And at one point I had asked a question like, is it me or women have to work kind of twice as hard before they get the same recognition as men? And she goes, no, you're wrong. She's like, women have to work 4 times as hard before they get the same recognition as men. And actually that really stuck with me, because I was like, oh, so first of all, I'm not imagining things. And second of all, it is going to be harder than I initially imagined. But I mean, at the same time, it's really a shift in perception of leadership, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Because as a CEO, you know that women CEOs.
It's interesting. Yeah,
right?
it's like I think I've said this fact on the podcast before, but like of orchestra CEOs, 50% of them are women, or really close to 50%. Like it's almost 50%, but almost 100% of those 50% are CEOs of smaller sized orchestras.
Oh.
So it's this, I think it's when you get to the larger budget size orchestras, bigger orchestras, it's changing a little bit. We've got our like queens, we've got Michelle and Jennifer, and we've got all of those, amazing people who are leading some of the biggest orchestras now, but
and
it's still
Marie Helene, who was a podcast guest.
Yeah, we've got, and so, but it's interesting, even in our group size, group 5, when I'm on peer calls, it's mostly men. And it's also, when talking about this idea of leadership, there's also lots of generational stuff of like the age of who is in charge. And that is becoming a little bit more diverse, but I'm one of, in the group 5, 6, I'm one of 2 people in their 20s who are CEOs, right? Which is, again, it's weird to be in your 20s and be a CEO, but there's 2 of us, me and Chasen. Go Chasen. And there's others as well in other group size orchestras, but they're a small little cohort. We hang out with each other. We're like, yeah. But I think it's so interesting, because we've talked with we've talked with Joanne Falletta on this podcast, and she, first female to lead a major American orchestra, and she's alive. That's how recent it was. And she's still actively conducting. Yes. She'll be here next season. Like
remember this. Yeah. Speaking of the fact that she's still alive.
Yeah.
There's an Oscar-winning documentary called "The Only Girl in the Orchestra," and the subject of this documentary, Oren O'Brien, was the only woman in the New York Philharmonic, and she's still alive.
She just retired.
She
was still playing.
Retired, but she's still alive.
That's the thing. She only recently retired.
Exactly. And the fact that we still have living connections to an era where a woman hadn't ever been the conductor of a major American orchestra. A woman hadn't even been a musician in a major American orchestra. It's crazy.
I mean, we've got recent history. I mean, we're talking, when I was in college, let's see if I'm going to get this correct. It was not the Vienna Phil, but the Vienna Opera Orchestra. The
Staatsoper.
Yeah. They had no women section leaders. They had women in the orchestra, but they had no female section leaders of any section. And the first woman to become a section leader got hired when I was in university, and was the bassoonist. And that was was really cool, because I'm a bassoonist. And so my professor in college, Jonathan Sherwin, he made sure we all knew that. He was like, this is really cool. It's crazy that it just happened, because our studio at BW happened to be all women. He said, I didn't do that intentionally. I just picked the best people, and you guys all happen to be women. But it was really, like, that's like my college experience. I was in a bassoon section of only women my entire time at undergrad. It was very, very strange. But the fact that happened so recently at orchestras is a craziness.
Yeah. And, I also, I was thinking back just on my whole working career. And, this must be a sign of a shift, that I actually have never had a male direct report. Like, the person who I report to at all of my jobs that I have ever had, starting with being a swim coach at the Kenwood Swim and Tennis Club in Cincinnati in 2009 to the present, where our current chair of the board is female. Yeah. Everyone I've ever reported to has been a woman.
That's really...
And I didn't think about that until kind of recently. And I'm like, wow, I bet there aren't that many men in their mid-30s.
That's really interesting.
Could say that.
That's real. And the Canton Symphony has always had women. There's been one male CEO of the Canton Symphony. Otherwise, it's been women. It's always been just women CEOs, except for Steve. He was the only male CEO. But Linda Morehouse, who was the founding CEO. I think she was technically called general manager for a little bit.
I don't think she was the founding CEO.
Well, she was the only person to ever have that. Before that, there was just people kind of helping, because it was a community orchestra, like that kind of thing. And then I think they gave her the title of executive director in the, I got to look up exactly when it was, but
70s.
I think it was the 70s. And I have stuff in my office from her still, of like stuff that's been passed down. I have a little statue that says, "Put on your big girl panties and deal with it," and that's a Linda Morehouse statue, and I keep it in my office because every CEO's had it in theirs. I hope Steve also had it in his office when he was here. That would have been so fun.
Is there a diagram attached to this?
No, she's just holding a little purse, and on the purse it says this. It's very funny. It cracks me up. It's it's very like early 2000s Hobby Lobby vibes, like statue, but I love it. Yeah, it's crazy. Like some people's life, like how some of this is so recent. And there are people who, though, my life experience has been, I've always known about female composers and conductors. But I've also always realized that it was not common. Right. And there was this idea of rarity about it. And obviously the goal of stuff like this and the whole industry is that it's not a rare thing. We don't say the female composer. It's just a composer, right? It's not the female conductor, just conductor, right. All that good stuff. Because it can get really tokenizing.
Right.
Like what you were saying earlier with I'm very cognizant of being Chinese and then I'm cognizant of being American and Chinese. So is that something like, as now a conductor, that you've felt like this kind of like token, like this, like it's like I'm this person here, and I don't know.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because on the one hand, it's really heartwarming that there's initiatives that are aimed towards increasing visibility of female conductors. At the same time, it's like, well, why do we need them, right? So, So it can, and I think for organizations too, it can be a fine line between, hey, are we just programming this so that we can
check a box,
right, and look progressive, or do we really believe in this music? And which I think a lot of times it can be both. It's not. I mean, to me, the important thing is that the music's getting heard, that women are given a chance. I learned the proper term for, what's called unconscious bias, right? Mm-hmm. So when people are choosing a leader, the unconscious bias is like, well, maybe there's a really strong musician like up on the podium, but she's a woman. So a lot of people just are going to have a block of sort of, well, that person is not as strong as this male person standing. I don't hold hard feelings towards anyone, but as I also have my own journey of sort of what is actually happening in this world, and it's interesting too, because, I've done a lot of workshops, a lot, and sort of all the different teaching styles that are out there, all the different, I see people who teach both men and women during the same workshop, and not too recently too, I've heard a bunch of sexist things said at conducting workshops. So it's just, part of it is, and there was, at one point I was looking into another master's program, and I had asked my friend, should I go and study with so-and-so at this program? And my friend, who I respect very much, who had studied with said person, was like, to be honest, no, because he's a misogynist and you're not going to have a good time. So I was like, okay, like, thank goodness he told me that. Right. So, yeah.
So I want to pivot a bit based on something that you just brought up. You have done a lot of master classes, a lot of workshops.
Yes.
And I find it fascinating that not only have you participated in a lot of them, but you've organized a lot of them. You founded 2 different of your own organizations that exist solely to put on conducting masterclasses. And so, like, from my perspective, I'm a member of the Conductors Guild. I get emails seemingly at least 1, if not 2, every week advertising a conducting masterclass.
Yes.
There are so many of them out there.
Yes.
So why did you feel so strongly that you wanted to found your own masterclass organizations?
So it came about pretty organically, right? Like I didn't intend them to be huge. I just intended them to be like, oh, well, people are asking for them. So, all right, let's make sure that they can do them, right? Like if they want to. And I actually was not, like, I was opposed to incorporating as a nonprofit because I was like, I don't think this is what we want, guys. Like, I just think we want to put on workshops and not, anyways, I was convinced otherwise. So otherwise I could take off title founder, right? So it was, and even, okay, so the pandemic basically halted most of our activity with New York Conducting Institute because clearly, we couldn't put an orchestra, whatever. New York the arts is still kind of coming back since the pandemic. So, but we would not have organized workshops if there was not a demand. And so our kind of MO is that the quality of the teaching has to be like high. Like if we don't have a good teacher, we're not interested in putting the work in, right? And then the other thing is sort of the type of workshop that's happening. Like we found that there were not very many opera conducting workshops. So we wanted to fill that need, and especially like recitative, like learning to conduct recitative is so hard. But yet there's not a lot of opportunity to learn how to do it. And so I think most of the time it's like repetiteurs, like those people who have the greatest grip, right, on recitative. But if you're not that kind of pianist and you're not a vocal coach, where are you going to learn to do that? Right. So, we were lucky and blessed to have some really fantastic teachers. And so we wanted to share the resource and help people. Oh, one of the best conducting workshops we ever did was excerpts for conductors. So we basically took all the hardest bits, right? Things that you always see on auditions. We compacted it into one workshop.
The glorification of the chosen one from the Rite of Spring, the part of Appalachian Spring that's got dot, dot, dita, 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 all of that. Like everything that always shows up.
The hard bits, yeah. Yeah. So that was actually, we got such great feedback on that workshop, which, if we're able to get the ball rolling again, we'd love to do that. I've actually gotten a lot of requests to do more women conductors workshops. So the people who attended that felt that it was really valuable and maybe someday soon.
Yeah.
So coming out of the pandemic, have you returned in full force with both of your workshop organizations? No.
It's been a little difficult. So what I found during the pandemic is that a lot of artists actually left the city, or they pivoted to other careers like, software engineering, coding, that kind of thing. And it was really interesting because I was lucky enough to conduct the new Conductors Orchestra in New York City. And I was thinking, well, I've lived in New York since 2005. Surely I know some of these musicians. And I get in front of the orchestra, 0 familiar faces. And I was like, wow. Oh, I knew one person because they were subbing one week. And that was it, basically.
Wow.
And so New York is huge. There are a lot of musicians there, a lot of opportunities to play and perform, but I think the pandemic just really kind of did a number on the arts. Clearly the Met is still there, the New York Phil is still there.
Right. So this is kind of a pivot question, but I think the pandemic maybe exacerbated or kind of showed the flaws in the system of what it is to be making your living as a musician, I'm going to use a really broad term of musician, of like, what does being an artist mean as a career? And I think now after the pandemic, it's even harder to make a living doing art of any kind. So it's like we can put like the music arts and the visual arts, anything, but like an artist or a musician being like a valid career, I think that there like I'm trying to think of like, when was the time that like that was like there was like people doing that as a career and you could sustain yourself on it and you didn't have to like I feel like it's so hard to do that without having a different income stream, right? And we've talked about this quite a bit, but like I'm trying to think of it.
It is still possible to do it. But you have to get into a group 1 or 2 or maybe 3, depending on where
the type
that group
of
3 is located, if it's a cheap cost of living place.
Right.
Like I think the Toledo Symphony might be group 3.
No, I don't think so.
But they are a full-time orchestra with benefits. Like they pay their musicians health insurance, which is a huge deal. So, but anyway, like, yes, you can still win an audition in a full-time orchestra, and you can get your health care paid by the orchestra, and you probably don't have to do anything else except play in the orchestra. But think about, you can name all of those orchestras, and I mean, the amount of tuba players in this country that are making a full-time living, it's fewer than 100.
Yeah, and it's even
a double-digit amount.
Like how many? But also, I'm thinking, how many people going into composition right now make their living being a composer, right? Like how many people, how many people?
The way to do that is to get your doctorate and get a professorship,
right? Yeah,
at a college. But that's still
you're not teaching full time.
You're not composing full time.
You're not.
You're teaching classes. You're teaching classes that might not directly be composition classes.
Like how many? And so I'm just thinking about this of like. And now I feel like I have to do research or something, because even composers back in the day had a patron, right? Mm-hmm. Like they had like someone
Joseph
rich.
Haydn and the Esterhazy family, or Tchaikovsky and Nadia von Meck. It's like they all had a patron.
So what? So the thought experiment that my brain is doing right now is like, how do we get to a place where like making art is a livable thing, which is, it's just like this interesting idea that like to do and to create, like you have to find a way to make it valid to the world, because the world doesn't place value in it.
Yeah.
It's this weird, we've talked about this a lot.
Well, ironically, during the pandemic, if you think about it, nobody could have survived that without the art.
Yes, exactly.
And yet it's extremely undervalued.
Right. It's one of the few things that sets humans apart from animals, is the fact that we like are able to create things purely because it's a cool thing to do. And it's very I think there's actually a couple of bird species who do just like build sculptures for fun, which if I'm remembering it correct, I need to look them up now. But we can't find a scientific reason for why they do that. We're like, what are they doing? And maybe it's just fun, which I love. Go birds.
Right.
Or like there are some, but for most of every other animal species, they're like, you are really brightly colored to attract a mate, not because of it's just pretty, because you're trying to, further the species.
Well, that's the whole art for art's sake argument, right? Like with the whole funding issue, it's like the education parts are getting the most funding, which totally, like education programs should get funding. Yeah. But it's harder and harder to make the case of art for art's sake.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to share with you. I haven't talked to you yet, but I just won a grant from the New York Foundation on the Arts, and I'm not supposed to announce it because they're like, we're going to announce it all together in May.
Great.
So sorry.
Oh, in May. Okay, we'll release this once it's announced.
Exactly.
You just tell me when, and then I'll push the button. Everyone, it's announced.
Well, I didn't tell you which grant I got. So.
Oh, okay, great.
But at the same time, it's like, great, I got money to put on a concert, but that doesn't help me pay the bills, right?
Right.
Like,
Right? That's the thing. Oh, operations, keeping the freaking lights on. Okay. Can someone give me a check to keep the yeah.
And that goes both for like an organization like the Canton Symphony, where nobody wants to just give to the general operating fund. People want to give to specific things, especially education. But what about for us humans who have to eat and pay our rent and all of that? It's like, all right, I have the money to rent the space, rent the music, pay the musicians, but like,
I need to buy groceries
for me so I could buy groceries. Exactly.
Yeah. If I'm dead, I can't contract musicians and I can't run, programs and Yeah, I mean, and so this is like a bigger, I mean, like, obviously, like, this is the bigger conversation about, like, as a society, what are we placing value in? And as a society, what are we funding and how do we distribute this? I mean, like, we could go deep into the weeds of how all of this goes about. But it's just, I think sometimes it's hard for me to, like, find the positivity for people who, like, because it's just, like, so difficult, and we are making like a natural human expression of joy that is so essential to being human, that defines us as humans, almost impossible to do and still be able to exist in this society that we have created. So I was at an artist entrepreneurship workshop a couple summers ago, and it was great. But one thing that really stood out to me is that we had people coming in to evaluate our work. And at one point, this person had said, because I was the only composer in the room, it was like mostly visual artists and writers. And he said to me, thank you for being a composer. It's hard work. And so thank you. And you know what? Like, no one's actually ever really said that to me before. And it just like, I just was like, oh my God, like, whether or not you get the commission, which I've never gotten a commission, hence the pitches Brew, right? We fund our own concerts, we pull our resources together, we hire our musicians, as such, and also, my mom was right. It is really hard to make a living as a composer. Like, I don't have all this money rolling in through ASCAP and BMI, right? Like, I didn't write those pop tunes. So...
And even the people who wrote the pop tunes, it's harder for them these days because of streaming.
The idea of streaming in the way that's 0.0007 cents per stream or something like that. It's insane. The low value. I think that's even low. I think it's even lower than what I just said. I think it's like a 1 in that decimal. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And then also musicians are getting cut out of that too because they're no longer getting royalties for playing on things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy. Who gets credit for what and where, and how does that trickle down? And you have to be so specific about how you credit people, and songwriters versus the person who performs the song versus who has the rights versus is it the label, is it the artist, intellectual property when it comes to art. Crazy. It's just it's.
And with AI now, like, that's just putting.
Let's not even open.
Luckily
that
AI hasn't really hit the music as much. There's been a little bit, but not as much as it, like, visual art. Yeah. My gosh. If I see one more AI.
So I'm curious. This is a fun question. I hope will be a fun question. So I have a really good friend from grad school who's probably one of, if not the most successful composer who was in grad school with me.
Yeah.
And he does get a lot of commissions. He makes quite a lot of money from his music being performed.
Amazing.
But even he has actually a very cool other job, which is judging dog agility for the American Kennel Club.
How do you get that job?
Including last year at the Westminster Dog Show, where after he judged, he got to sit in a VIP box right behind Martha Stewart.
What? Wait.
So he lives a really cool life. So
career change. Pivot. We're all career changing. This is a new thing.
The fun question I have for you is, what is a cool non-music job that you've had over the years to help pay the bills?
Nice.
And what is the worst non-music job?
I know you've had some worse ones.
Anybody who might listen, what is the worst non-music job to pay the bills you've ever had?
Oh. You can start with the bad or the good. Your choice.
Now, listen, you learn something from every job, right? Mm-hmm. I'd have to say a job I will never go back into probably is being an executive assistant. While that was lucrative at the time and allowed me to afford composition lessons and allowed me to survive in New York City and buy an apartment, woohoo! Like,
and buy an apartment, not rent.
In Queens. In Queens, not in Manhattan or Brooklyn. That is just, it's kind of glorified. It's glorified secretary. It's not that fun. It's making someone else's life better, which great, but I don't know. Also, there's sort of the whole sort of female stereotype of, women are executive assistants in there, Anyways.
You're so organized. Yeah. It's like, okay, all right.
So I would say that's probably something I would not do again. But, I've had random jobs that have been really great. Like during the recession of 2008, I was working for the U.S. Census Bureau. And that was actually a lot of fun because my job was to basically, like, we had a list of addresses and we had to verify that those addresses were real. Okay. So basically I had to walk around the neighborhood and just verify that
it was a real place.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But I had never walked that far or that deep into Queens. Like, usually I just get off the train and, that's it. My apartment's there. But like it was so eye-opening. I learned so much about the cultures, really, I would see one apartment and it would be like only 1 or 2 bedroom units in that building, but there'd be like 20 names and on one door. And I was like, wow, whoa. So that was actually a really cool job.
Wow.
It's, the longest non-music job I've had was working retail. Which I think everybody in their lives should spend at least 3-6 a year working some kind of service job, because that's a tough job. Yeah. Like working with the public and So I will not name the company at this moment, but it was good. It was full time. It was higher than most retail jobs. Great benefits, flexible. It allowed me to take time off or move things around to go to the rehearsals at the New York Phil, to do my concerts, to trade days with someone or give a day away so I could, write my composition at the last minute that I had procrastinated on. Right. So you're right. Like the typical musician, if their income is not fully from performing, it has to be supplemented in some kind of way. And so, it's all character building, and it all goes into the art, right? Like all these frustrating things that happen when you're working retail, like it goes into your composition, right? It somehow goes into that great swirl of creativity that's happening.
Yeah. The musical movie Tick, Tick, Boom, which autobiographical about Jonathan Larson, who's most famous for writing Rent. Was very much, I was like, oh, this came entirely out of trying to scrape by as a composer in New York City.
That's a great musical.
It is a great musical.
It's a great one.
And the writer of Severance actually got the idea while he was working a day job. I don't know if you know the premise to Severance.
Yeah, there's your personal life and your work life are separated. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, of course that inspiration came when he was at a day job, right?
A soul-sucking day job. If only I forget about it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, and so you've done some cool, so you've mentioned Pitches Brew and stuff. Like, could you talk a little bit about like the collective and the composition stuff where you guys pull your own stuff together and what those things are?
Well, so we are Pitches with the P, right? Because we thought that with the B it would infringe upon Miles Davis and that whole thing. And then also we're like, well, if we apply for grants, it might not be a good look, right?
If it's the right grant.
Yeah. But so basically, 3 women composers, all very different styles. 2 of them cross-trained in jazz as well. So that was great for me because I got to lean on them when we did our jazz concerts, right? I'm like, should I use 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th chords? I was like, what am I doing here?
How many numbers up there?
So I think like diversity is a strength, right? Like you learn from others. Also, We're all over 40, which is why if it was the B, pitches with the B, it would also not be inaccurate because I think with age comes a sort of certain like, oh, I don't really care, like what the world thinks of me at this point, right? Like I want to do my thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a camaraderie, right? So when I was in grad school in El Paso, I wanted to write a paper about the friendship between Margaret Bonds and, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Thank you. Because I had come across, some research that said they were supporting each other, that they would help each other with like extract parts and things like that. And I was like, that's kind of what pitches Brew do. Like we don't help each other extract parts, but we're sort of this emotional support system, and we encourage each other to keep going. And so for me it was. It's just it's kind of a luxury, right? To have other people who are on your side, know what you're going through, because they do it too. And we're not really competitive with each other. The thing about like being conductors, it's a very competitive field. Composition, it's a very competitive field, right? And so a lot of times with musicians, it's hard to be in the same field and not feel competitive.
And so you guys put on concerts?
Yeah, so usually what we do is say, okay, we're going to have this ensemble, we're going to write for this ensemble, and we're going to have the concert on this day, we book the venue, and then we have these deadlines, right? So usually
you guys are creating work for yourselves. That's amazing. That's so good.
Right. So that we don't have to rely on grants, because those are not always guaranteed. We don't have to rely on patrons, because that's not always guaranteed. We can just pool our resources together and make sure that our pieces get done the way that we want them to get done.
So what is it like still composing a good amount and balancing that with your work as a conductor?
So I have a short story. So I crashed the Cabrillo Festival last summer, like on their last day of their Conductors workshop, and I had met a composer who was one of their guest composers, and she was telling me the story about how when she was in school for composing, a famous composer-conductor had come to talk to them, and he had said to me, or he had said to her, okay, so one week I was there as the guest conductor, right? Like I was given, he wasn't given a red carpet, but he was like, yeah, they took care of everything for me, they arranged everything. And then like a few months later, he had returned to the same large orchestra as the guest composer. And basically he was like, they're like, yeah, here's your rental car info. Do you need anything else? So
it was the same person. It was the same orchestra.
Yeah. And so it's just really interesting that, that's why I went so long as a composer and having to have that day job, because like the income was just scarce, right? And at this point, like most people ask me, oh, why are you conducting now? I'm like, because they pay conductors. But composing is kind of one of those things that is almost like a luxury. Like I remember going to hear Augusta Reed Thomas talk, and she composes from like 4 in the morning to like 9 in the morning, and then she goes to her job at, I forget what school she's in.
University of Chicago.
Yeah. And then she teaches, and then, I don't have that kind of discipline. Like, I like sleep, so to compose is something that has to be very intentional. You have to actually block out all that time. I'm not saying that score study isn't hard. It is hard. It is very time consuming. But Bach, whoever, Stravinsky already wrote the thing. Right? So, you need to internalize it, you need to study it, you need to tear it apart. Yes, you need to do that. But if you try to write something and you're tired, or if you try to write something and, you just had a customer yell at you for no fault of your own, right? Just scream at you. You're not really in an emotional space I mean, maybe you're going to rage create something, but composing requires an immense amount of emotional space. Mm-hmm. So people who create, I think they are kind of undervalued because besides that whole sort of stereotype of being a tortured artist, people need to know that they're going to be able to have food. They need to know that they're going to have somewhere to stay, right? Like, I just think that the emotional space needed for creation is people don't really think about that.
Yeah. So as you've been in this, you've done the Pitches Brew. There's a Dance It Yourself Nutcracker, which we talk about, which sounds really interesting.
Yes, I should send you the movement. Okay, so my friend Kevin Chavez, amazing double reed player, he tracked down this dance movement called Toffee, which is like an English dance. I need to send it to you because it's really cool.
Is it by Tchaikovsky?
It's by Tchaikovsky, but it never made it into the final ballet.
No way.
That's on the cutting floor.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. But as you've been in the field of orchestral music for a while now, what do you hope for the future? Like, what are the biggest challenges you see right now to this field, and what are you hoping to be able to impact as you kind of see it into the future?
That's a really interesting question because being both a composer and a conductor, I kind of see, and a producer, there's just so many things to think about. So I think the biggest thing on my mind is accessibility, right? And I know that you think a lot about this, about ticket sales, about education outreach, about who wants to come to the concerts, who can come to the concerts. Why would people come to a concert instead of stay at home and watch Netflix? I think that one thing the pandemic showed us is that people need human interaction, right? And they need live art. They need that kind of interaction, but yet it is just so tempting to not go out of your way to do it. And there's a lot of barriers to that, to cost, or just not being informed of events, right? Or just not being in the habit. A lot of people actually do love live events, and genre is also a consideration. I only dealt with jazz and orchestra and chamber, but there's pop, there's rock, there's heavy metal, there's just. So I only know the classical music side, right? But it's just sort of how do we get people away from the screens? And also I realized so my parents tell the story how when they were raising me and my brother, they never had to have a TV or iPad on to feed us. But then when they were helping out with my niece and nephews, it was they had to have the iPad on or they wouldn't eat. Right, and you see it everywhere in the restaurants, right? The kids, screen.
I once saw a family eating at a restaurant. They placed their order, and while they waited for their food to arrive, not a single one talked to a single other. Both the parents and all three kids were on their phones until their food arrived. I'm like, I cannot even fathom having sunk to that. Low of a point.
It's created a society that chemically in our brain we're dependent on it as a society in certain areas. And kids who grow up on it and their whole even if you don't have any screens in your household, everything else does. The entire world that you're interacting with as a young person is screens. So your brain, there's just this weird.
Well, I'm old enough reaction thing too to remember when MTV was a new thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to talk about intellectual property or anything in terms of that, but in terms of people sort of having these visual stories to go along with their music. And I don't remember some article, some research I read saying that audiences now are expecting a visual element with their music. So it's harder and harder to just do a music concert. You know, and then you think about these incredible venues like the Sphere in Vegas, and like my friend FaceTimed me like during a U2. He was at the U2 concert in the Sphere, and literally like him just handing the phone around.
I don't think I could do it. I think that's too much for me. I think that the stimulation is too. I think it's just too much. I would be like, okay, get me out of here. I'm trapped. This is too much. I don't think I could do it. It's too much. I remember the first time I watched Times Square. It was sensory overload. I couldn't handle it. Like, there's too much brightness. Everything I had to immediately. I was like, sorry, gotta get out of here. And now anytime I walk through Times Square, it's to get to stuff. Like, I'm not. Oh no, we're not going there. New York is just straight through. It sucks because so many theaters you have to go through. Yeah, theater district is right there. It's right there. But yeah, so it's just like this crazy.
Right. So then how do we make art for a generation? I mean, not that you have to make art for someone else, but like how's art received?
If you're going to be a business and sell tickets to be able to sustain other employees, you have to make it for someone else. Is the thing.
But there's also this pullback of like. So many of the musicians that are performing, and even younger ones, they still want that traditional. They still want to make music in a traditional concert setting, where the audience is going to sit quietly and just watch them play music and have nothing else. So like there's also that. I don't know if that's as much prevalent in New York, but certainly I know a lot of musicians here. They are still very attached to the traditional concert experience.
Yeah, I don't think it's dead or irrelevant. I just think that, you know, there's something about like culture, right? Like Chinese culture. If I want people to learn about it, I have to put it out there and not keep it to myself. So kind of the same thing about classical music culture. Like it might also evolve. Well, it has evolved, right? We have all these like score to film, you know, things and all that, and rock band, classical music concerts, and I think it's great. You know, I think it's fun. But there's also something to be said for putting your culture out there and letting people take it if they want to, versus like. You know, sort of like push you in the face and be like, we must have this tradition. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's kind of like this balance that you kind of have to have.
Yeah, for sure.
So I am curious, as you move forward in your conducting career, you didn't get your master's all that long ago. So in a lot of ways, like this is the beginning.
Hopefully.
What are your personal hopes and goals for your own conducting career?
Before I answer that, I'm going to go kind of the long way to that. So something that I had talked to Sean Edwards, she teaches at the Royal Academy of Music in London, and she has her own program for women conductors. And one thing she had said to me is, she's like, I find that with the female conductors, by the time they realize they want to conduct, they're already so far behind the men. So there's also sort of this opportunity issue as well. And same thing as female composers, right? Like if that female composer doesn't get a chance to have their music played as much, they're not going to develop as quickly as the other composer who does get their music played all the time. So it's kind of this cycle. So for myself, my personal goal is to learn as much music as possible, become as good at the craft as possible, to, you know, learn what the orchestra needs as much as possible, and just to have a good work ethic, to be true to a leadership role. Whether or not that gets me a directorship somewhere or not, or whether or not, you know, I'm at that stage in life where I want to be committed to the process still and not committed to the outcome, because I learned early on that being very outcome oriented is just anxiety inducing, stressful, you know, filled with depression. So for me, it is more of a sort of, it's more a personal journey. What can I learn? What can I offer people? So I'm going to continue to audition for things. Hopefully I'm going to bring back some of these conducting workshops. Actually, I spoke to a colleague in Hong Kong recently, and we were talking about, we should do this workshop, we should do that workshop. I've been spending more time back on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, so perhaps, some of my skills will be useful there, whether it's organizing or conducting. I want to know that my commitment to the arts is quality. Yeah.
That's great.
That is wonderful. Yeah. So before we let you go, we're going to ask you the question that we ask every guest at the end of every episode of this podcast.
Matthew's favorite question to ask.
And it is a very open-ended question. So literally take it and run with it however you wish. How do we orchestrate change?
Not with a notation program, that's for sure.
I've been waiting for someone to make that joke. I've been just waiting for it.
Do I get a prize?
Yes, I'll find something in my office.
How do we orchestrate change? I think outside of specific policy or anything like that, it would just be about having more empathy for people, having more listening time than speaking time. Having money helps. Just kidding.
Yep. No, it definitely does.
Because I feel like a lot of our world now is just consume. And a lot of times just like, I've been addicted to certain TV shows and then like I lose myself. But then I think about the artists who had to make that, right? Like that writer who had to go through that day job to get the inspiration to do this, to like the director who made this incredible, to the cinematographer who, right? Like so much goes into art. And I feel like if people just had more empathy day to day and just were more concerned about how each other were doing, these stories would naturally sort of make their way out there and maybe get some more visibility. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I like getting to know people, and I wish that I could spend more time with you guys before my time ends. But hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Oh, yeah. That's a really great, this idea of it's like you don't like a food you've never tasted, right? Like, and you can't like something you've never experienced. And half of that is just being quiet and listening to other people, and having empathy is incredibly important. And that's a really great point. So,
well, Alicia, it has been absolutely wonderful to get to know you over the past year. Yeah. And we're so glad that you've been a part of our lives and a part of this organization.
It's been super
for
great.
The time you have.
Yeah.
I've loved every minute. Thank you.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for doing this today too, for chatting with us and for having this amazing discussion. So, yeah.
Woohoo.
Conductor Alicia Lieu, who has been a conducting fellow here at the Canton Symphony Orchestra for this past 2024-2025 season.
Orchestrating Change is a production of the Canton Symphony Orchestra.
Our theme music was composed by Eric Gould and performed by Derek Snyder and Tim Adams.
Our audio engineer and mixer is Nathan Maslick, with video and audio editing by Shoreline Media.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.